Yes, 318. Noes, 43. Abstention, 1. The question is agreed to, and Advocate B. Mkhwebane is accordingly removed from the office of the Public Protector, according to the recommendation of this House. Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable members, that concludes everything and the House is adjourned.
Well, as we heard, the impeachment vote has been successful. 318 MPs voting yes, 43 noes, 1 abstention. We're obviously getting reactions on the back of the results emerging from the National Assembly. We are going to get some reactions from Lawson Naidoo from CASEC, and we'll obviously understand the implications at large. Quite a few interesting facts emerging at this point. 160 million were the costs associated for taxpayers. We're looking at the implications at large as we even edge closer to the appointment of the recommended public protector by President Cyril Ramaphosa, as the Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane's term inevitably came to the end in October. So let's see what emerges from here. And two, the National Assembly meeting at the Cape Town City Hall, where Parliament voted on the removal of suspended Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane. That now stands. The Public Protector, as per the National Assembly's recommendation, has voted that she be impeached. Again, let me reiterate those numbers coming through. 318 yes, 43 no, and 1 abstention. We obviously know that this debate and vote followed Parliament's Section 194 committee submitting its report to the National Assembly, recommending that Mkhwebane be removed due to incompetence and misconduct. It also means that at this point, we saw live on our screens that the votes occurred verbally. Some background info: the ATM having asked that that vote occur via secret ballot, but the Parliament Speaker inevitably denied that request. The National Assembly's decision obviously now goes to President Cyril Ramaphosa for presidential assent. Our reporter Abra Barbio has been outside of Parliament also monitoring developments. We're going to also try and connect with Abra. For now, though, Lawson Naidoo from CASEC joins us for reactions. Lawson, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC. Perhaps looking at the processes following up to National Assembly's vote day, what are your thoughts as we obviously heard the outcome from the National Assembly, given the numbers?
Indeed. Good afternoon, Liesl. Thank you. Yes, we've heard the numbers. The motion as presented has now been duly passed with a 2/3 majority. The Speaker will now communicate. She'll have to write to the President informing him of the decision that has been taken by the National Assembly. And the President will have to give effect to that decision by removing Busisiwe Mkhwebane from office with immediate effect.
What were your thoughts about the rules developed by the National Assembly to deal with this motion, given the Constitution didn't specify how the removal should be dealt with at large?
Indeed, the Constitution simply says that Parliament must establish a committee to do so, and then Parliament then had to put in place the rules, which are subject to extensive discussion in Parliament. It's an elaborate set of rules that clearly provides for the right of the accused person, the head of the Chapter 9 institution in this case, to be able to give their side of the story, and we've seen that through the course of this process. This one was a particularly lengthy process. It is the first time we've gone through such an impeachment process for the head of a Chapter 9 institution. Certainly one would hope that in future these processes can be run in a shorter time frame and more efficiently, with an outcome more speedily, because it doesn't do any of the parties any good, including the person who is under scrutiny, for the process to be drawn out in this way. But I think the rules, are reasonable. They're cogent, and the committee conducted its work in terms of those rules, despite the attempts, I have to say, by Busisiwe Mkhwebane and her legal team to draw out the process and to bring into play factors which were really irrelevant for the consideration of the committee.
Lawson, for those who are not privy to the context, perhaps you can break down the impeachment process and what it ultimately means from here on to.
Well, this process is put in place because public office bearers, including heads of Chapter 9 institutions, are accountable to Parliament, to the National Assembly, and they have to account for their conduct. In a case where substantive motion is brought, as it was in this case, alleging incompetence and gross misconduct by the head of this Chapter 9 institution, it is Parliament's responsibility to investigate and to take appropriate action in that regard. Now, Parliament is not a court of law. It has therefore set up these rules. They were assisted by a team of evidence leaders who took them through the evidence so that the members of the ad hoc committee could make sense of the information before them, to go through that information and to make a decision based on the evidence that was presented, which is what was done. So that's Parliament's responsibility in this regard. It's exercising its oversight authority over those Chapter 9 institutions.
There have been concerns about the 160 million rand costs associated for taxpayers at large. Your thoughts on that?
Well, again, that's very unfortunate, and should be a matter of grave concern to all of us, that a process like this should never really cost that amount of money, particularly given the fiscal position the country finds itself in. And that's why I say the lessons to be learned here needs one of which needs to be that there needs to be a more speedy response, not necessarily a half-baked one, but a proper process can be run in a much shorter space of time, with an allocation of resources for the person facing scrutiny to be able to get legal representation, which is required. But that can be done in a shorter period of time and a much reduced cost to Parliament and to the public purse. So that's something I think where lessons need to be learned for the future. The fact that this process ran for well over a year, I think, has led to the kinds of expenditure that we've seen, the kinds of fees that were being charged by the legal team appointed by Busisiwe Mkhwebane.
Lawson, lessons for the future. How would you reflect on Mkhwebane's term before suspension on the 9th of June 2022 by the President? And at this point, given the numbers from the National Assembly, how will this salvage the Chapter 9 institution given its predecessors?
Well, I think, the principle of accountability, I think, has been established, and that, I think, has been an important outcome of the Section 194 committee process and today's vote in the National Assembly, is that if people holding high public office do not conduct themselves in the way envisaged by the Constitution, then they must be held to account and take the consequences that flow from that. So certainly this has had an impact on the public perceptions of the Office of the Public Protector. It has brought that office into disrepute. Yeah. And the new Public Protector, who will take office in a month's time or so, will have a huge task ahead of themselves to restore public confidence in that institution, because it has become highly politicized. It continues to be so.
Lawson, thank you for your time with us on the SABC. For those sentiments, Lawson Naidi from Kasek weighing in on the back of the vote outcomes from the National Assembly today in Cape Town. Let's bring in more reactions. In fact, our reporter Abra Bambia is standing by. She's been monitoring developments in Parliament. Abra, good afternoon. Perhaps you could talk to the processes leading up to the National Assembly's vote today. What are the reactions also coming through just outside of Parliament? Abra, Diesel, we're obviously live. We're getting reactions on the back of the voting outcomes from the National Assembly regarding the impeachment of the suspended Public Protector. Walk us through what's happening.
But the National Assembly has also voted in favour of her removal. The votes for the report to be adopted was 318. There were 44 votes 44 members who wanted her to stay on, and then there was one abstention, and that was from COPE. With me right now, I have the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Lecheso Tsenodi. Sir, thank you for joining us. This has been a long process. It started, I think, in 2017, and it's now nearly at the finality. We just need to wait for the President now. What's this process like being for Parliament?
It's been a difficult process. Firstly, we didn't have the rules for doing this, so the court decided that we should do so. So we did the rules, and unfortunately the way the process was dragged, as you would have heard in the speeches of members of the committee, the dragging of Parliament, although others think it's what happens in Parliament, they call it filibustering, or as they have said here, many of them about Stalingrad methods. The important thing for us as presiding officers, it will bring stability to the Chapter 9 institution. This is a very important body, bodies that support democracy. I have been delegated the responsibility to work with these bodies, all of them, so that the relationship with Parliament is a cooperative one, and to the best of our ability, we take up the issues they bring before us to conclude them. This too happens to have come through the decisions that emerged about her and so on. And so we think the conclusion of the process is very important to us because it also saves us money. Democracy is not cheap, that's true. But oftentimes the way money is used is what we are sensitive about. We would like to redirect those resources in pursuit of public causes rather than individual interests.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. I need to move on to another party. If I can have the Chief Whip of the DA, Favour Mkhwebane, with us. Ma'am, this has been described as history in the making. It's the first time, it's unprecedented in South Africa, and this motion stems from your party. How does the DA feel today?
Look, we're really pleased that this chapter has come to an end, and that 318 members of the National Assembly voted to remove the Public Protector. Of course, we had in 2016 already objected to the appointment of Advocate Mkhwebane, and the past 7 years have really been marked by scandal after scandal, and really a juniorization and a degrading of the office of the Public Protector. And so firstly, I think it's a victory for Parliament that we could firstly vex the rules of the institution in conjunction with the Constitution, and we could see them working regardless of party political lines. And secondly, I think it's a victory for the people of South Africa because their public representatives have finally voted to remove somebody who was no longer serving them and has never sought to serve them in that office.
Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. I saw the chairperson of the Section 194 committee, Mr. Kubudile Dyanki. It seems as though we've missed them. So many of the MPs, they took so long to vote, and now that the voting, oh, here we go, let me see. He's on the phone right now. These MPs took so long to vote, and now they're all running away from us. It seems he is preoccupied right now. I can't get to him, unfortunately. He's on the phone, so there seems to be confusion over here. Okay, the chairperson can't speak to us right now. Okay, Chair, briefly, I know the other colleagues are all waiting for you as well. This has been a long process. You've been through a rough time over this past year. I'm sure it's been emotionally taxing, it's been physically taxing, professionally taxing. And today, you finally saw the end of it. What's on your mind right now?
Well, we're doing our duty, very focused from start to the end. We have now delivered our report for the removal of Ms. Busisiwe Mkhwebane. We're going to be focusing on other tasks that we have in Parliament. As you know, I'm chairing the Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Committee at our first meeting last week. That's going to be another project that we deal with. Besides, I need to go back and work with the magistrate. We have over 500 interviews we'll be doing in the next 2 months.
But also the next big vote is for the new Public Protector.
That's for the 21st. So that's also done, but it will be a vote that we need to do. But this is what we're elected for. We're elected to be steadfast, to do our job without buying any face. And so this is a first, of course, to do this kind of work. But I'm pleased that members of Parliament have protected the institution, kept the decorum of the National Assembly, and at the end, with very strong basis, we delivered the report that I'm very confident in any court, whether there is a review, it will stand scrutiny.
Thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, my colleagues in Joburg are asking me to wrap right now. We are going to be going over to the studio. Thank you. That was very messy. Hello, sir. I'm sorry.
Action on this breaking news story. You can see, of course, as you saw earlier on from SA Today, the vote for the Public Protector, suspended Public Protector, that is, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, to be impeached. It's been a long time coming. You think back to the Section 194 committee, and that, of course, has been the big contention. She said that she has not had the time or even sufficient time to finish her evidence, and she has been, of course, complaining about several matters when it comes to, the procedures in that particular, inquiry. But who was chairing that particular process, looking into her fitness to hold office, says that he is happy that the members of Parliament have defended the integrity of Parliament, saying that he is confident that, this particular report will be able to stand scrutiny should it then reach the courts. And that is something that the suspended Public Protector has been threatening. And we'll continue to bring you more reaction, because it is important that we bring you reaction from those who are in Parliament. All right, let's bring you more on our breaking news story now and cross back to our reporter, Abria Barbia, who is standing by in Parliament with more reaction. Abria, over to you.
Thank you so much. Do you know what happened in the House now? All the MPs were given a mic and they had to vote yay or nay. And I was looking away and I just heard this voice, this loud, confident voice saying, I vote no. And I looked down and it was Natasha Matsone of the DA. And of course, this was your motion, I think from 2017, that today, how many years later, has been voted on. How do you feel?
Well, I feel great. And I must just correct you. I stood up and I said, I vote yes.
Sorry, my mistake.
It was a definite yes from MP Mazzoni. Yes, it was originally my motion that I brought before the House. Today is an extremely historic day. We have made history. It's a mixed bag of emotions, because I'm very glad that we have seen democracy in action. I'm very glad that we have done what Judge Zondo has told us to do, which is to hold people to account and to do oversight. But I'm very sad that an institution that used to hold such esteem today has had their head removed in an impeachment motion accepted by the whole of Parliament. There is nothing in the world I would have wanted more than to have been wrong, but I wasn't wrong. 3 judges initially looked at my motion. They judged whether or not there was prima facie evidence. They found that there was, and then the largest ad hoc committee of Parliament ever established then sat for 14 months, 14 whole months, and they listened to hundreds of hours of people testifying on evidence that I had brought through in my motion. And it has been proved beyond doubt that our Public Protector is constitutionally delinquent and she is unfit to hold the office of Public Protector. I'm relieved, though, that we have proved today that no matter who you are, no matter what position you hold and no matter what power you think you yield, we will always hold people to account. And there's a Latin saying, which I will say in English: who watches the watchdogs? We do, the members of Parliament. We watch the watchdogs. And I hope South Africa knows that today Parliament acted in the best interests of South Africa, not in the best interests of Parliament or for themselves. We acted to protect the wall of defence that is the Office of the Public Protector, that can never, ever be questionable. We proved today that when you are questionable, we have no interest in having you around. We will impeach you and you will be replaced with someone beyond reproach.
And what do you think about what the parties who voted no, they made remarks about the relationship between the ANC and the DA. They made it sound like there was something sinister going on behind the scenes. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's typical political sour grapes. I mean, you know, that's politics. What you see in there, a lot of it is theatre. And then outside, everyone knows what the real truth is. But I think what you saw today was that there wasn't a secret ballot, which means everyone, including myself, I was held to account. That's why when you said you heard this booming voice say no, I quickly corrected you, because the South African public must hold me to account that I voted yes to impeach the Public Protector. So those who voted no, they must answer to their electorate and tell them why they don't think that all those judgments and the scathing reports from the Constitutional Court about the lack of constitutional knowledge of our Public Protector and her fruitless and wasteful expenditure did not deem her not to be suitable for the job. So I think there was even a political party, and I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of it, but one of their members abstained, one of their members voted no, I think. So it just proves each one of us today held ourselves to account, which is so important. So ignore the theatrics. The fact of the matter is a section 194 committee was established, and they scrutinized every piece of information that was brought before them, and they brought that report to Parliament, and that was a multi-party, democratically elected, mandated committee of Parliament, and each one of us today had the right to stand up and say yes or no. So theatrics.
What you say about theatrics, I mean, I have a bird's eye view to everything as well, so I see what goes on, and I don't think that the members of the public actually know in committees the cooperation between parties who are traditionally, who people won't imagine can actually cooperate with each other. There's actually, in many of the committees, I do see the cooperation, I do see that similar ideas are shared by parties, and I think that's what we saw today as well.
Absolutely. You must remember that we fight on ideology, but at the root you would hope, and my hope is always when I'm having a bad day, I hope and I must believe that every member of Parliament has sworn that oath of office, the same one that I have sworn, and that we are all really here to serve the people of the Republic of South Africa. And I think that there is a special place in hell for those who come to Parliament to serve their own interests and not the interests of South Africans. Let me tell you, Aisha, it's not easy speaking truth to power. It's tough, and when you're threatened constantly, it's tough. And it's easy to stand up in Parliament and say, I vote yes. But when you come out of Parliament, you don't know who's waiting for you because you voted that yes. So I'm not saying that, you know, what we did was brave. I'm saying what we did was right. And that's what South Africans today should be so proud of, is that the majority of MPs did the right thing. They stood up to power, they spoke truth to power, they asked the question, who watches the watchdog?
Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Matsuri. That was Natasha Matone of the Democratic Alliance. Of course, this was her motion in 2017 that she brought to the House, and now finally, so many years later, it's seen fruition. What we do know is that from here, the House has voted. It's made a decision. It now goes to President Cyril Ramaphosa, and he will then make the final decision. He will then sign off on what the National Assembly said today. So, of course, the suspended Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, we know what her fate is today, and then I think on the 21st of September we're going to be having another vote about the office of the Public Protector, and that of course is the report on the recommendation of a new Public Protector, and we know that the name recommended to the National Assembly is the current acting Public Protector. So that will happen on the 21st, and as things stand, it looks like the ANC have the numbers to vote in favour of Advocate Koleka. Studio, back to you.
All right, that is Abria Barbia there, who is coming to us live from Parliament as we saw that vote a little earlier on. We'll continue to bring you more on this particular story as, of course, reaction keeps on coming. We understand, of course, in terms of the votes, around 318 yeses, no 43, 1 abstinence. And interesting, we also saw that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was not in Parliament, and it'll be interesting to also see what happens in that particular regard, given what the party's Secretary General also had to say, especially ahead of this particular vote. So quite an interesting one happening in Parliament. But we also have Bulelani Philip, who's been watching this particular story. And there's been a lot of talk, of course, about this particular one and what happens next now with the president. And it's all back to him now. Bulelani, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's talk about that process, that very critical process now moving from the National Assembly straight to the president. How does it all unfold?
Well, good afternoon to you, Bongiwe, and to the viewers at home. Obviously, now the report of Parliament will now be submitted to the President, and there his responsibility basically is to satisfy himself whether the process that was undertaken by the Section 194 inquiry, as well as the vote that has been taken now at the National Assembly, did follow due and fair process, as well as whether it's constitutional and compliant. And therefore, only after that, the President's satisfaction, he can then sign this recommendation so that it can become effective.
So, Bulelani, what happens then if he says he's not satisfied with it? Does it go back to the National Assembly? What's the process?
Well, under normal circumstances, if it does have reservations about whether the report or the process undertaken is not constitutionally compliant, of course, that process will then have to be taken back to Parliament for it to actually make amendments or consider actually the concerns that would have been flagged by the President and his legal team. So we don't know whether he is going to have any reservations, but they will have to wait to see whether he's going to take it back to Parliament or find himself in a position where he says, I'm satisfied with the report and therefore I can sign off on it so that the removal can be effective.
And it'll be interesting to also see how Advocate Mkhwebane responds then to this particular one, especially given what she's been saying about the inquiry and the process thereof in the public domain.
Well, it's not only Advocate Mkhwebane who will be considering taking legal action. Again, I mean, the EFF this afternoon reiterated what they've been saying all along, that they've been waiting for the National Assembly to make a decision on this matter. And they've reiterated the fact that they will be taking this matter on legal review. But the tricky part in that, I guess both the EFF and the suspended Public Protector we'll have to look at the time frame that's left for the term of office of the Public Protector, which is due to expire on October 14, which is in just over a month's time. Now, I suspect maybe they will have to maybe seek an urgent application to actually review this report, because anything after that date of October 14 might perhaps maybe be rendered a moot exercise, even if it goes to court.
And Bulelani, it's also interesting, even listening to, during the debate, what the MPs had to say. One can actually actually tell, as they're debating the fierceness of their arguments. It also, kind of took us back into the committee somewhat, because we also saw lots of divisions when it comes to opinions there on what should happen on this particular matter. Let's talk about some of those, because people like, for example, Violet Zungula, the leader of the ATM, definitely against this particular report.
Well, you're quite right, Bongiwe, because we've seen a replication of what we've been hearing within the committee. Because, even the parties that were in favor of the removal process in the committee, again, banding together and voting for the removal of the public protector. And of course, what you see is that the people who voted in favor of this removal recommendation is the ANC, the DA, the Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP, the IFP, the Good Party, as well as the National Freedom Party. And on the other hand, those who have been consistently opposed to the removal of Advocate Mkhwebane, again, coming up strongly, the EFF, the UDM, the ATM, the PAC, the AIC. COPE was split because the COPE lead, Musiwale Kota, decided to abstain, while his other MP, Mr. Tebogo Luate, actually voted against this recommendation. And the last person who voted against this, removal process was the party Al-Jama.
All right, Bulelani, it'll be interesting to see then what happens on this one, as we also await to even hear from the suspended public protector as to what kind of way forward does this then, pay for her. But thank you so much for giving us that comprehensive update. That is our reporter there, Bulelani Philip, who was also watching the developments in Parliament for us, and really lots of reaction this evening